Welcome back, Yellowhammer Nation. It's Yellowhammer Radio, Superstation 101 WYDE, also 1260 AM, 95.3 FM. Three great ways to hear the program. You can tweet the show at YHRadio. Your phone calls as well at 866-551-9933. I am Scott Chambers.
Andrea Tice here, along with Chris Reed, our lawyer-in-chief.
That's exactly right. ReadLawAlabama.com to find out more about Chris Reed, co-host with us each and every Monday. And we are joined now by former Alabama Chief Justice Roy Moore, who is running for the U.S. Senate. Judge Moore, welcome to Yellowhammer Radio. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Scott. I'm glad to be with you.
Well, we're happy to have you on the program today, Judge
welcome
Moore.
Aboard.
So
yes, ma'am. Andrea.
Yeah, thank you.
You are running for U.S. Senate. So my first question out of the gate to you, Judge Moore, is why should the voters in Alabama elect Judge Roy Moore for U.S. Senate?
Well, I think that the voters in Alabama know me. They know what I stand for, and they know what I'll do. I'll stand for the principles upon which this state and this nation are founded, and I'll represent the people of Alabama at the United States Senate. My background in the judiciary, my background in the military, my background in the farming, agriculture, all add to the fact that I can help in those areas which Alabama needs.
And what, jumping off of that point, Judge Moore, what do you see would be your primary agenda for the state, whether it's economic or some other item? Tell us about that.
Well, of course, I share President Trump's vision to make America great again. I think we can. I think we need a lot of the things he's proposed. I support fully. Taxation reform. We've been inundated with taxes. Every politician wants more taxes so they can spend it. And I think in regulations, our economy is hampered by an overregulated, overtaxed economy. Businesses are struggling with unfair trade restrictions. I think these things need to be addressed. Health care, I completely support repeal of Obamacare. It's a bad name for it, but it's caused increased premiums. It's caused lower technology advancement. I think it just hurts us in many ways, much less the amounts we pay for it. We're not getting our choice in health care like we used to.
Yes, Judge Moore. I'm sorry. Judge Moore, I guess one of the issues that's going to be coming up next year on the agenda is how is the Republican Party going to function as far as like trade tariff, tax reform? And as you know, in our party, we have the free market conservatives or the nationalist populists, which is more of the Trump side. They're going to be more for that 20% border tax. I wanted to know your position on whether we needed a border tax and exactly where you stood on trade, just so the listeners could understand how you differ or how you'd be the same as President Trump when it came to those issues.
Well, I surely won't do what the Republicans and the Democrats have done in the past with these unfair trade regulations. We've simply cut our state and our nation out of business. We're accepting things, and if it takes tariffs to make things equal, then I think that's what we should do. I think that we've caused our working population here in America to lose jobs. I'm very familiar with the textile industries, with the steel industry. My brothers have been in the steel industry, and the steel plant they're working is closed, like most steel plants are closed. I think we need to invest in our own economy by bringing these businesses back and use our own natural resources. The high things charged on or attempt to eliminate coal, I disagree with that. We should use whatever we need to use.
So I guess, like, whenever I worked at the Heritage Foundation, they taught us, these principles of free markets that, trade generally is a good thing because it decreases the cost of goods and services and it creates jobs as well. So my concern as a conservative is how far are you willing to take it? Because, you could, if you're willing, is it worth saving 100,000 jobs here to lose 1 million? So I guess what I'm asking is how far are you going to take that? Because that's traditionally not a Republican principle. That's a principle of the Democratic Party. And so what I want to know is where are you going to draw the line between I support free markets and I support protecting Alabama jobs?
Well, I think free market, free enterprise system is a good system generally. I really do. But I think that we've hurt that ourselves by letting jobs go overseas and making it impossible here at home. This is not free market. When you're over-regulated. That's why we need to remove the regulations and work for the businesses so that they can have lower cost. We've overtaxed them, over-regulated them, and then wonder why they go to another country. And we've got all kind of problems they face in business which they don't have in another country. So if we're going to bring them back, we've got to equalize it some way.
Our guest is Judge Roy Moore, candidate for U.S. Senate. Judge Moore, I'm from Etowah County. I live in Southside, and you and I both know what happened in Gadsden with Gulf State Steel, the steel plant closing, and industry going overseas. We've seen that all too well, especially in the Gadsden area, but that's, statewide. What will you do if elected to U.S. Senate to bring more jobs to Alabama? And not just Alabama, but working in concert with your colleagues in the Senate to keep jobs here in America?
I would decrease taxes on businesses. I would decrease regulations on businesses and make it more profitable. If you've ever examined the fair tax, that's something that businesses would profit by. They would not be paying the taxes. They'd be collecting the taxes. By the way, my wife is from Southside, Alabama, so I know Southside very well.
Go Panthers.
And it was a wonderful place.
So you think the consumption tax, that's a very conservative idea. That's I believe, is that the Neil Bortz? Did he come up with? Is that what you're advocating for the fair tax?
I think so. I think that's a consumption tax. It's a tax on which you buy new goods and services. New goods and services. You wouldn't pay taxes on the older goods that are used goods, and also it would make it the same tax rate that you're now presently having. Including your employer tax. Everybody gets their check, knows how much is taken out, and that would be eliminated under the fair tax. Now, I'm just simply saying that's one tax that should be investigated by Congress. It's not something, fail-proof, but it's sure a lot better than what we got now. And also the equal tax, the flat tax, I should say. That's something that should be looked at. But what we've got now is the most ridiculous system ever, and it works to the disadvantage of the people. And we've got IRS bureaucracy up there that's there just to harass people. There's got to be a simpler way.
Judge Moore, I have a question. Let's just do a hypothetical here. If you were in the Senate right now dealing with what the House just sent them as far as Obamacare, repeal and replace, what do you see?
I would repeal it.
Completely.
What about having a replacement ready?
Why would you leave it? Why would you leave it?
Yeah. When
the people have spoken, they want it repealed. If you replace it, then you're asking for more trouble. You're asking for a healthcare system that won't work any better than what we've got. They'll eliminate some provisions, they'll leave others, and we'll still be in the quagmire of healthcare industry. The solution to healthcare industry is reduce the regulations in the state on, the state allowing other healthcare providers to come in. Free enterprise. That's what Scott was talking about. I believe in that. I believe if more healthcare providers could be accessible, people will have lower cost, better health insurance. We call this health insurance. This health care mess is a lot of things, but it's not insurance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a mess.
Just to clarify, Judge Moore, I want to make sure that I've got this right. Would you be okay with just repealing it immediately without even having any type of replacement ready?
Yes.
You would be?
Yes.
What about the transactional cost between?
I think along with that, Scott, you've got to have open the state borders by interstate commerce to allow other health care providers. The states have got these locked into certain health care providers, which are driving the cost.
So would you support a 2, 3, 4 year delay just so the transaction cost, if we were going to go back to the way before the ACA, to give it enough time so the people wouldn't have, like the people that had depended on it or had made different arrangements. Do you think they should be given some time or just take them off immediately?
There could be some time, Scott. I mean, I'm not saying that, you have to work when something's changed like this. But it's still not fully implemented. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a way that we could work just to repeal it and give some time maybe for it to adjust, of course. But I think it should be repealed. When I talk to people about health care, I say, where do you find that? Where do you find education in the Constitution of the United States? In the hands of the federal government. We are a state that dare defend our rights. One of those rights is the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. It says that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. We once believed in that very strongly, and our forefathers knew that that was one way to curb the power of the federal government. When the federal government gets involved in a system, you remember Ronald Reagan.
Sure.
Ronald Reagan said the closest thing to eternity on life on Earth is a government program. Yeah. What did he mean by that?
They never end.
They never end. They keep going and they drive themselves. This is what James Madison said in his memorial. He said, the freemen of America did not wait to usurp power and had strengthened itself by exercise and entangled the question in precedents. They saw all the consequences in the principle, and they avoided the consequences by denying the principle. Mm-hmm. We revere this lesson too much, soon to forget it. Well, we've forgotten it. And that principle is simple. Once you open the door and once you step into it, then it allows a precedent for other things. And eventually it's a permanent evil, in the words of Washington in his farewell address.
Our guest is Roy Moore. And Judge Moore, do we have you until the top of the hour? Because we do have a break coming up.
Yes. All
right. Our guest is Judge Roy Moore, candidate for U.S. Senate. Some great questions by Chris Reed, Andrea Tice, and we'll get to those. Judge Moore, we may even have some more questions, maybe even from some callers when we come back. Judge Roy Moore is our guest candidate for U.S. Senate, 866-551-9933. We are live from the callks.com, Heating and Air Studios, Alabama license number 11120. Welcome back, Yellowhammer Nation. Scott Chambers, Andrea Tice, Chris Reed. Our guest is Judge Roy Moore, former Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court, now U.S. Senate candidate. And we do have some phone calls standing by. We're going to get to those in a moment. If you want a question for Judge Moore, it's 866-551-9933. Welcome back in, Judge Roy Moore. And Chris Reed has a question for you, Judge Moore.
Yes, Judge Moore. I've noticed, I've followed you for, 15 years, and I've noticed that you talk a lot about your faith and the gospel. And what I want to know is how you can apply the gospel of Christ to the people that oppose you, to the people that are, in organizations that are against you. Because sometimes in politics, I think people confuse, all right, these people are the enemy, but in Christianity, we're taught these people are the mission. So I want to know how you're going to effectively minister the gospel to the people that are going to oppose you.
Well, it's not the job of a legislator or a judge to administer the gospel. We all stand for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, which is the power of God to salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. But, as a legislator, I will always recognize God and the foundation of our Constitution in God, because the people that have gone to Washington so often forget the reason they have a Constitution. The reason they have a Constitution, in the words of Madison, was to restrict power. And Washington said, if in the opinion of the people the distribution or modification of the Constitution's right to be needed to protect wrong, let it be corrected by the amendment, not by power. And right now we've got people that disregard limitations on their power.
So you don't think it's your job as a Christian to share your faith to the people that God puts in your life? Because I don't believe you believe that, but that's what I'm trying to get at. Well, what about the people that are very much against you or oppose you?
Yeah, because there are detractors.
Yeah,
there are detractors.
That's called free exercise of religion. That's why we have the First Amendment, sir. Congress shall make no law respecting established religion or prohibiting free exercise thereof, or breaching the freedom of speech, press, or the right of people peaceably to assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. The first part of that being the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. That is exactly what government is to stay out, free exercise of religion. You're not to tell people how to worship God, but the acknowledgement of God is not an establishment of religion. And unless you understand that the basis of our Constitution is God, and that was what James Madison said in Federalist 37. He said that it was written as if with the finger of God. So, the acknowledgement of God is something that we can't prohibit, but to tell people how to worship God, that's their business, and it's not the role of government.
All right. Appreciate that answer. Let's take some phone calls. We've got Stephen standing by with a question for Judge Roy Moore, who is a candidate for U.S. Senate here in Alabama. Stephen, you're on Yellowhammer Radio.
Hey, thank you, and good morning, Justice Moore.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you doing?
Well, very fine, thank you. And I had the honor, Justice Moore, of having you as the guest on a program that on Crawford Radio I was hosting, pitch hosting, where you came on there for an hour about 4 or 5 years ago. Big Dave would remember, and I sure appreciated that. And you did a wonderful job on that program, talking actually about a lot of things that Chris Reed just mentioned. But Judge Moore, I sent a letter to you about 3 weeks ago. I hope it's gotten to you, involving a good Alabama law under the Alabama Judicial Administration Code that is being circumvented by local municipalities that have managed to get the legislature to endorse their municipal acts that use what they call prefatory language as a poor excuse to disregard this higher Alabama law. And that higher Alabama law is upheld by Attorney General Opinion 99-00181 for those that are in the citations. But
let's get to the questions real quick. Just one sentence here.
Administration code that require an officer to stop a vehicle and issue a ticket to any defendant alleged to have violated a traffic law. And what the municipalities have done in about 10 cities in Alabama, and it's growing. There's word out that more cities are going to be trying to do this.
Time's limit.
And put in these automated traffic camera ticket issuing things that poor people get a ticket in their mailbox 3 weeks after they've...
I apologize. I'm going to drop his call there because Judge Moore, that was a lot of questions at once, and we were kind of losing control there.
Let me just say to him, I do oppose those traffic lights because they don't identify the person; they identify the violation, but not the person. And the person that doesn't do the violation gets a ticket. But anyway, I'll cut it off there.
Yeah, no, I've always wondered about those cameras too. If it takes a photo of my car and I get a ticket, can I take a photo of the money and just mail that in? I've often wondered the answer to that.
I agree with Judge Moore on that. They're unconstitutional.
I can't give you a legal opinion on that, but
You'd support it with me, right? Come on. Let's go to Sam on line 2. Sam, you're on with Judge Roy Moore.
Hey, guys, Sam McClure. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
I got 2 quick questions for the chief.
Sam?
Number one, if the Alabama State Executive Branch, the mayor, governor, attorney general, ignored Roe v. Wade and just started applying Alabama pro-life law and protecting the 16 babies that are killed every day through abortion, what should be the federal government's response to that? Question number 2, Chief, do you think Luther Strange violated any provisions of the Code of Professional Conduct in his prosecutorial duties when he accepted the job from Governor Bentley?
Hey, let's go backwards. First off, I'm not going to comment on my opponent's conduct. That's up to the other people. I don't disparage an opponent. That's if there's violation, I'm sure it'll be recognized. If there's not, that should be recognized. So I'm not going to comment about that. The first question was, again, what? It's very faint.
Yeah, we lost his call there, Judge Moore. The first question, it was something about abortion. I didn't write it down. Chris,
he's saying what?
I think abortion violates the Constitution. Roe versus Wade built off precedents that go back to 1965 in Grizzle versus Connecticut, where they allowed contraceptive devices to married couples. Now it seems like a minor thing to us and seems like maybe a right thing to us. But when the government starts getting into creating rights, it does create a problem down the road with precedent.
Right, and let me ask you about that. With Roe versus Wade being that's currently standing, if elected, would that be on your agenda, sir? Would abortion be on your agenda since there's no current cases against it?
Since there's no cases against it, if I don't understand, the Senate passes laws. If there came up something to take right to life out of the jurisdiction of the courts, I would be for it.
And I think the caller was asking about whether or not, if we started to enforce as a state our right to life position, he was asking how should the federal government respond? Wasn't that something along the lines?
Like a
along
10th
those
Amendment
lines.
question, I think, is what he was going for, Judge Moore.
Well, I think the federal government would respond against that action by the state, but I think the state has a right to do it.
Is that now? If you actually look at the Colorado situation where they legalized marijuana, you said earlier about the federalism and 10th Amendment. Do you think that Colorado, as a state, a sovereign entity, should have that legal right, or do you think that's the jurisdiction of the federal government?
Well, I understand the Colorado position on that, and I've seen where it's going out there, and it's against the federal law, and the federal law has to be tested on that. And if the state of Colorado is willing to test it, then I think it should be allowed to do so.
Okay.
Fair enough. Well,
fair.
Judge Moore, we appreciate you being on Yellowhammer Radio today, taking the time out of your busy schedule. It's going to be an interesting race, that's for sure. I know you said you're going to take the position of not attacking any fellow opponents, and it's going to get interesting because that might come out from your opponents attacking you. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all fares out. We look forward to continuing the conversation during the race and coming back on with us here on Yellowhammer Radio anytime, Judge Moore.
Well, thank you, and I've been attacked by my opponents many times. I think that's what's degraded politics to what it is. It's all about criticizing somebody else. People know what I stand for, and it's about what I've done, not what I'll say I'll do. And
all right.
That should be enough.
Judge
Thank
Roy
you.
Moore, appreciate you being on Yellowhammer Radio with us. Chris Reed, sir, appreciate you being here with us as always on a Monday.
That's great to be here, Scott.
Glad having you. Great questions,
And
by the way, for
extra
Judge Moore.
special effort to get here. We appreciate that.
Y'all are welcome.
Appreciate that. Very good questions today for Judge Moore. Chris, we'll talk to you next Monday. Andrea, you and I and Dave will all be back in about 22 hours, and we'll do this thing again.
You betcha.
All right, see you guys tomorrow. God bless.